Hello, this is Mike at Gamefromscratch, and welcome to something a bit different. Today we're not actually going to be talking about game development. This is something I need to do for myself, and I thought I would actually share the results here. But the truth of the matter is, this is something that probably each and every one of you is going to face at some point, especially if you succeed in making a game, and that is creating a website to go with it. Now, Gamefromscratch itself is going on about 5 years, and starting to get a little creaky in spots. So I'm not going to create a new site. Gamefromscratch is my baby. I'm going to keep it forever and ever and ever. But it's not ideal from an SEO perspective, and it's certainly not ideal from a performance and cleanliness perspective. So going forward, what I want to do is I want to create a new site to host my existing and finished tutorial series. So it's still going to be on Gamefromscratch, but I want to make a clean new site that I can also put them there as well. So it'll load faster, be much simpler, cleaner to navigate, and hopefully win-win for everybody. Now, to go down this road, I had to decide which technology to use. And I imagine if you're like me, you're a game developer as opposed to a web developer. Now, I've done this stuff in my past life, and I can work with web design. I just don't particularly enjoy it. This is not my focus. So what I want is something to provide for me, but I don't want something huge and bloated. So a lot of the choices, probably, let's say 1/4 of the world's websites, it might be a little bit lower than that, but it's around that number, are running on WordPress. And WordPress is this massive PHP-based CMS system that has just sort of morphed into the monster that it is. And put simply, it's massive overkill. My wife actually runs a WordPress-oriented site as well, and I've had to troubleshoot some things like CSS files caching or breaking on it, and it is a gigantic pain in the butt. You've got so many layers of confusion all bundled together, and I don't want to go that route. Now, when I started Gamefromscratch, I used Blog Engine, and that's because at the time, ASP.NET and C# were the technologies I was most comfortable with. And in retrospect, that was probably a bit of a mistake. So I'm not going to use Blog Engine again, and ideally, to be honest, I don't want to run anything on my server. I have dedicated servers. Gamefromscratch requires some of my other projects require stuff. So I have hosting. I have good server. I have 100% root level access to everything. But I don't want to install another technology stack. I don't want to have to worry about keeping PHP patched up or Apache going, or, I don't want more technology in the mix. I want this to be as clean as possible. But at the same time, I don't want to fire up Notepad and start from scratch, eking out a site. I don't want to have to maintain the framework or go through a gigantic hassle of updates every time I add something new. Now, this site's going to be a little less dynamic than Gamefromscratch. I don't really need blogging and those kind of things. All that stuff will still happen on Gamefromscratch. But I do need a hierarchy. I need, it's basically the equivalence of master pages. I need inheritance. I need a site framework. And as you can probably guess, looking at the screen behind me, the answer is Jekyll. At least as far as I've found, Jekyll seems to be the perfect choice. So if you're in the same boat, if you need a simple, clean web solution, and you don't want to go hog wild and do this all from scratch, and you don't want something gigantic and bloated like WordPress or Drupal, then I highly recommend you to check out Jekyll. Now, Jekyll is very tech-oriented, at least the initial creation process. It's built on top of Ruby, so you need to have the Ruby stack installed. Now, this can present a gigantic problem if you're a Windows developer because, point blank, the Ruby ecosystem is fragile as hell. New updates come, everything breaks, but in the Windows land, it is 10 times worse. I actually started looking at other site generators, and I could not get, for example, SSL to work right now. It's currently just broken. You're just out of luck if you run Windows, and you're not a priority platform for them to fix. So sadly, the Ruby dev stack on Windows is not an ideal experience, but even when I was running this on my Mac, I ran into some issues there. So definitely, by far and away, Ruby is going to be the most challenging part of this, but you only need Ruby for your development tools. The cool thing with Jekyll, the key thing with Jekyll is it's actually a flat file generator. So at the end of the day, it is just spitting out a set of HTML files, CSS files, and image files that you can upload to your server and be done with it. So we're going to look very quickly at that process, but I'm going to assume you've installed and have a stack of Ruby running already. If you're not on Linux or Mac, either use Homebrew or whatever package manager you're using to do the install that way, and it should be flawless. If you're on Windows, you probably want to use Ruby Installer, which is available on rubyinstaller.org. There's a possibility you want to install the dev kit as well. When you come into the install, it's down here as an option. When you get into the dev kit, things start getting a little trickier. Now the cool thing is, for the most part, Jekyll just released version 3 as of the time I'm recording this, and it has less dependencies. So you don't even need to have DevKit installed. You can just download and install this installer right here, run it, and you're good to go. So once that's done, just fire up a Ruby command line, like start command prompt with Ruby, or if you're on Linux or Mac, run a terminal. And we're actually going to need 2 of these. So I'm going to fire this first guy off. So here's the first one. I've set into Uber font, so hopefully you can read that. But to install Jekyll, all we need to do is gem. Gem is the package manager installed with Ruby. Just gem install Jekyll. And this will run off and do some things. Is it Jekyll RB? Am I spelling it wrong? Yes, I am. Sorry, I should actually spell it right, perhaps. It's a word I have trouble with for some reason. So this will run off and install the required gem components. So basically it's going to configure itself to run Ruby, and we're done. So that might take a little bit longer for you. I actually did it. I had an install, I uninstalled it, so I might have some components already configured here. But the process should take seconds, regardless. And then when you're done, you now have a new command available to you called Jekyll, like so. And what we want to do, first off, is create a new site. So go to the directory you want to create it in, and we'll call it My Site. And this created a folder called My Site, like so. And that's done. You just created your website. Congratulations, you are completely finished. Have fun. Now, the reality is you're going to want to modify, change it, etc. And there are themes available out there, plenty available, so you can kind of get a bit of a head start going, especially if you're not comfortable with CSS, etc. But I'm going to walk you through the components that make up a Jekyll site in a second. But now there's a pair of commands we want to run. First off, Jekyll is a static site generator, as I said earlier, but we can have it actually monitor the file systems and constantly rebuild as it goes. And this can be done with the command Jekyll build and then watch. So this will do an iterative build process. And now this window is basically hung. It's going to sit here and watch for changes in the file system and automatically rebuild them for us. So that's very cool. We're set and going. Now any changes we make in that folder will automatically be generated, and you'll see how that works in a second. This is why I fired up a second window here, though. So we're also going to want to serve it. You don't have to. You can actually just open the files directly, but sometimes you run into weird things if you're not serving your HTML. For example, JSON requests might fail, or etc. So a lot of times when you're testing locally, you're best off to serve the actual file. And Jekyll makes that very easy. So just fire up another window and run the command Jekyll serve. And this is going to start a web server in the background, like so. So we should be up and running. So now I can come back to our web browser over here, and you'll notice right here it said server address is 127.0.0.1 port 4000. So that's where we want to go. That's the loopback address. So it's the exact same thing as localhost. And boom, welcome to your site. That is it. So you now have a Jekyll site up and running. And if you want to deploy this out to the world, all you do is copy the contents of this folder. This folder is your site generated. So if I open up this index file, okay, there's the side effect of not serving it. This is ultimately the same thing as this. So these are, this is your code for your site. You would just copy this out to your web host, or one of the cool things with Jekyll is it can actually be hosted off of GitHub if you wish, but these are the things you deploy. Now let's go back to this directory structure for a second. It's kind of important. Your key here, anything that starts with an underscore is ignored basically. They're generated files. Those are where the content that Jekyll builds with comes from, and then everything else is static and is being sent up. Now the cool thing is it's doing things like building feed.xml for you, and feed.xml is used by RSS readers, etc. So you're getting the functionality you need from like a full-blown CMS type thing for discoverability, for Google being able to do sitemap for you, etc. But you don't have to maintain it manually. You wouldn't want to create this file by hand every single time you made a change to your site, etc. And you can also see a little bit in here of tagging. And this is using something called liquid markup, and you build your site off of kind of Lego-like blocks, and these bring in variables or values or even code. So see here, you can see a loop. It loops for tag in post.tags and creates the corresponding HTML as a result. So it's a meta scripting language. Now keep in mind when you're deploying to your server, this is a site generation script. It's creating those files that ultimately end up in site here, but these files are normal HTML. So this is not dynamic code running on your server. This is all running on your development machine for processing the source files. Now let's look at that process for a little bit. So here is the home of your new website. Let me just kill this guy. So file, close all. And let me just show you your index HTML page as an example. So let's open that up in brackets. And this is basically the starting page of your application. There's a couple things going on here. There's this section right here. This is an important concept when dealing with Jekyll. And it's referred to as the front matter. And basically this is a YAML markup, Y-A-M-L markup, basically telling Jekyll that you need to process this file. And let's look at index, exactly what we've got going on here. So you can say, process this using the default template. We'll see that in a second. And then this is the content. So it's basically home, and then you can see a little bit more of that liquid markup. So basically it's looping through all of the posts available in the variable site.posts. And then printing stuff out as a result. So the key thing here is this layout default. Let's go back to our hierarchy here, and you see in layouts, default right here. Let's open this guy up. And this is, again, another liquid formatted document that's basically creating our overarching site. And it's got an interesting concept here of includes. But this is your web page generator. And here, this brace content brace, this is the marker that this code now gets pasted into there. So you're creating these dynamic hierarchies of page information, and it's generated and brought together using these default templates, but it allows you a lot of code reuse, so you could create your header, your footer, your etc., and they all kind of come in together, and you can do some fairly advanced stuff via this liquid programming language on top. But this is the composition. So you can see here, this header is built up of an include head after the HTML tag and an include footer before the body ends. And then we'll go take a look and, okay, so include head and include header. So head could potentially have your Google Analytics links, etc. Your header is your graphics at the top of your site, footer being graphics at the bottom of your site, and you can mix and match this however you want. And then this guy, again, is a key variable, which is going to do substitution and bring in whatever we're talking about. Now, at the same time, these are available for pages and posts. Now, a page and a post are very similar, but slightly different. A post is like a blog post. There's there's an aspect of time involved in it. I'm not going to say chronological in any form whatsoever, but post would be considered a blog post. They care about when they were created, and I'll show you how to create one in a second. It's super easy. Whereas a page is a web page. So in my case, my site is actually going to be mostly composed of pages, and anything that's a page is going to automatically be put into this template right here. And that process, again, super simple. We'll see it in a second. So over here you have a posts forum, and your post comes in like so. So right now you say, welcome to Jekyll. If we go back to our preview, you see this welcome to Jekyll right here. So if you're running a blog, you can run it this way. So all you want to do now, if you want to create your own blog content, is come in and just basically new All right, so where we just created a very simple snippet of HTML, not even full HTML, but this would be your process of writing a blog post, however you wished. So now let's go into our site, go into the post folder. Now the key thing is, see on this one right here, it's got the date in a very specific format. Well, you want to follow that. So when you name your file, we'll go with today, we'll call it Hello Cruel World, and I'll go with HTML, like so. So that's all that was involved, and save that. So now keep in mind, I'm running this guy in the background, so it's automatically redoing it as it goes. If you don't have this running, you would have to do a Jekyll build again to create your new updated site. But now that post was just added to our site, so now I can head on over to here, do a reload, and boom, your new blog post is here. Click it. Hello Cruel World comes in. Now, you might notice a bit of a flaw here, is we didn't get any of that formatting or templating. And let me show you why. So, there's a guy we created, there's a guy they created. It's not the fact that it's markdown, it's the fact that I didn't put a YAML forward in front. So it's this section here of code tells it how to deal with it. So now I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to drop in that YAML. So you're saying, for layout, use the post template. Your title is here, so we shall dub the Hello Cruel World. And these values right here are basically what are feeding the variables, a variable elsewhere. I'll show you some variable uses. For example, post.date. So post. Let's go on back here. Post.title is being populated by this value right here. So that's where some of this metadata is coming from that is used as variables elsewhere. But just by adding this this YAML forward on top, so we'll go ahead and save that. So now we'll go on back, reload, hit Hello Cruel World, and now you see it pulled in all of the stuff. So we have the templating on it, our site now. So adding new post, it's as simple as putting in that forward and then your content. And if you want to have like slightly different formatting, you can. And we'll flip back for a second to one of those here. So here again is one of the templates that's applied. This is for default, and I think index.html, yeah, index.html uses this default as its thing. So basically, this guy right here, this page, index.html, is being populated by this template. So it's using, sorry, here's your code for it, and it's using this template, which is available here. And again, this guy is pulling in includes, including head, header, and footer. And includes basically can be thought of as snippets. And they are available in the includes folder here. So, for example, header pulls in this guy. And you'll see a little bit of confusion here. There's this menu icon going on. It's just a chunk and snippet of code, and there's a bit of intelligence going on there, because you'll see it automatically supports collapsing down and so on. But that's it. That's all that's involved in changing your footer. So if you want to change out your footer, you don't want all this gibberish down there, you go in here, you change, oops, let me just go back to the browser, you change footer. We'll open that up, and we'll turn our footer into simply that. So get rid of this stuff, just a description, and boom, now down it goes. Now you'll notice if I go back to our home page, it's edited here, and all of your templated things are all pulling in that same include. So you can really quickly create usable code, reusable code across your site. And as I said earlier, your process of bringing in blog posts is a joke. And now the cool thing is you can also do it for pages. Pages can exist anywhere in your hierarchy. So let's say, for example, I wanted to bring in a tutorial. And if I make a site, if I make a link here that isn't generated, actually, they've changed it in 3, because there used to be a pages. I don't want to do this wrong. Because anything that's outside of there can't have processing, I think. So I don't want to go down that road. Okay, I'm not going to do this yet. But I can bring in any of my existing, I'll do it as a post instead of as a page. So here, we'll change Hello Cruel World. Like so, and So here's my process. I'm going to have to migrate from my existing blog. My existing blog is, again, Blog Engine, uses a technology called BlogML. And here's one of my most recent posts, right here. So now, what is the process of taking and porting this guy right here to work in my new site? Well, I just come in here, grab the HTML source, copy. We'll shut that guy down. Paste. Done. So now we've got a real honest to goodness post in there. Come on back here. Let's reload. So we get SFML tutorials, brings in, and boom, working code, all done. So that's how easy it is to actually, for me to migrate things over. So really all I need to do to get my site going is my header, my footer, any sidebar navigation, etc. I'm going to have, and then just copy and pasting the content over, and then you're done. So this inheritance, it's all powered by this neat YAML process across the top. Just going back. So this guy is super critical. It's basically telling Jekyll how to do the substitutions to power your site. But you can see it's very, very simple to understand. And then the only other thing, and this is something I need to learn a bit more about, is your markup. Now, here I'll show you here. For example, CSS markup. This guy is using the CSS class of page heading. All right, so if you've done any CSS work, this will be a no-brainer to you. And you'll notice down here, CSS is created as a generated file in the CSS folder. So again, no underscore means it's going to be copied forward. So this file is ultimately generated for you. Now the kicker is it's being generated using SASS. And SASS is something I don't know yet. So I need to learn this. But it's a language built over top of CSS. And again, I need to figure it out. But this is how you would style all of your site. Very, very clean, very, very simple, very, very consistently applied. So really, that's kind of it. That's all that's involved in doing this guy. You generate it each time, and you'll notice as it's being generated, it's creating the key things you need. It's got, your XML files are being dumped out. And otherwise, it's just you're creating this folder, and you just grab this guy right here, copy it to your folder, and boom, your website's live. You make a change, copy it up, your website's live. Now, theoretically, there's an area we can get into a bit of a trick, is you'll have to figure out what specifically changed and do you deploy other than copying everything up. So I could see there being a particular downside of Jekyll. As your site gets really, really big, doing change merges might be a bit of a trick. At the same time, you could probably hook it up to Git and do a publish, like a diff publish of some form. That's a problem for down the road, and I don't think it's going to be super, super, super critical. But that is, in essence, Jekyll. So if you are looking for a website, you want to have it do like the underlying organization and work for you, but you don't want a big bloated server, definitely check out Jekyll. I think this is what I'm going to use personally. So if you want to see how that turns out, definitely keep an eye on Gamefromscratch for a new announcement of a new site. Hope that was useful, and back to game dev related topics in 3, 2, 1, see ya.